Thank you, Mrs. There we are. Recording is in progress.
Oh, how do I done?
So,
Okay.
you're right, we're back.
Getting back. Press the wrong button.
So, first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming along to our event tonight. My name, if you haven't met me, my name is Kim Macleod from Indie Authors World, and we help make writers' dreams come true. So we help lots of people to publish their books. So they are self-publishing, keeping all of their rights, all of the profits that they make from the sales of their books, and we just do all the hard work behind the scenes to get the book ready and out on sale. And I am absolutely delighted that I get to have this fabulous webinar tonight with Aimee Walker.
Hi.
Here we are.
Hi,
Aimee's been working with us as well as one of our very valued editorial team. But she does lots of great stuff on her own. And so we're going to have a little chat about how we can help you all figure out kind of how you could write the next best-selling romance novel. And wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody from tonight actually, comes right through and becomes a bestseller in 2023? That would be exciting.
That'd be amazing.
So, Aimee, just before we get started, tell us a little bit about how did you get into editing, first of all?
Well, it's quite a long story because I started in university years ago. I did an English degree focused on women's fiction through the years, and then when I graduated, because I'm from Northern Ireland and it was early 2000s, it wasn't really possible to have a career in editing and stay in Belfast. I would have had to move to London and I didn't want to do that. So I stayed here and kind of gave up that dream until around about 7 years ago. Maybe a bit more, but once my kids were up a little bit and I went back and did some more training, and the internet has kind of enabled the whole world to get involved in publishing. It doesn't matter where you are. So now I am mainly work with indie authors and specialise in romance and women's fiction because that's what I've always been passionate about. And I love to help women or marginalised people to break into publishing, especially romance. That's kind of my favourite thing to work on. So.
And we know you do a great job. I mean, that's the reality. We know that you're passionate about it. Thank you. That you definitely do a great job from turning those kind of raw manuscripts or raw starter things into something that becomes polished, that can actually then be read. And that's, I think, for us, working with all sorts of different writers, the editor's role is crucial. Because a writer's so often they're just in the story, they're immersed in it, don't they? And not often able to see this a bigger picture of where they're going with something. So
yeah, it's kind of hard to see the wood for the trees when you're right in it. And yeah, the relationship between writer and editor is really important. And I have a counselling background and education. That's what I did kind of in between, so I find that really helps because I do have quite close and friendly relationships with all my clients, and find that really it's important to me, and I know that they all stick with me. So I think it's important to them too, and really helps the process.
Yeah, and it's a it's a big thing to kind of write a story and put it out there in the world. So I guess, because I know as well from me, I've got a sort of positive psychology background, did a bit of counselling therapy type work as well. So I know that there's lots of people, it's what's going on inside their heads that can stop them from actually going ahead and really getting their stories out there to the world, because it's the fear of, oh my goodness, am I going to be judged, or what's going to happen? So I'm sure that people appreciate the fact that you've got that, so you can hold their hand along the way as well as be the professional editor too.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome is real for us all, and it's a big barrier for writers, especially, because there's so many, aspiring writers out there that sometimes the confidence is the thing that just mindset and things like that are things that you really need to work on, as well as obviously the actual writing skills and coming up with a really good happily ever after.
And that leads us seamlessly into talking about what we're really here to talk about tonight, which is all about romance and writing, like you say, your happily ever after. And we're just going to do a little product placement just to get started here, that what we're also going to be talking about tonight is it's Aimee's book, Top Tropes. Rachel, our wonderful assistant who works with us, is going to put a link up there in the chat as well to the book for on Amazon. If anybody wants to, while they're here, kind of go and order a copy, then you certainly can. So we want to kind of talk a little bit then about why do people love, I suppose? What is it about romance books that can make it such a bestseller? Because the reality is, it is, like I said, it's the #1 bestseller on Amazon. So
yeah, there's a lot of different reasons, but I think the guaranteed happily ever after is a big part of it. Or we say HEA or HFN, which is happy for now. And all romance has to have that. That's a guarantee. If you write a book and you don't people call Romeo and Juliet a romance, and it's not a romance. It's a tragedy with a love story in it. So you need to be very careful that when you're writing that your book has that happily ever after or happy for now, and that's something that attracts readers, because they know that there will be that happy ending, and that is a form of escapism, isn't it? And that's what reading is for a lot of the time. Reading fiction takes us away from the reality of difficult lives, and loving romance isn't a new thing. Jane Austen was writing romance in the early 1800s, and we've had a relationship with romance since then. It also, out of all the genres out there, all the genre fiction out there, it probably has the widest variety of subgenres within it. So if you like suspense, there's romantic suspense. If you like fantasy, there's romantic fantasy, paranormal stuff, historical, all periods of history, contemporary. It can be hot, it can be not. So there's a lot of scope within romance that it can suit everyone's taste. So there's a lot of reasons, but I think that's the kind of main one. The other thing is that there's a lot of emotional depth within romance. We talk a lot about characters' wounds and the character arc and the journey that the character goes to from the beginning of the book to the end. And we go into a lot of depth of the emotions within romance, maybe more in romance and women's fiction than in other genres. So we relate to that. We can relate to the characters. It can be very true to life as well. So there's lots. Sorry, I went down a wee bit there. You can tell I love it.
Absolutely, lots of reasons. And I think what we saw certainly during the whole sort of COVID time, I think, my goodness, we're past that. It's almost like that was a bit of, did we wake up and was that real? Because it feels as if that's like a kind of story in its own. But I think that was that the escapism, certainly, during sort of the whole like lockdown times that we had and the difficult times we've had in the past couple of years. I can see why. I mean, as they said, romance has always been a bestseller, but the sales for romance definitely took another hike during that time. I mean, all books did. People were reading lots, people were writing lots, but romance certainly took a hike.
I think the emergence of self-publishing has really helped romance as well. Romance writers have been writing books, but not necessarily having them published for years, because they weren't chosen by publishers, mainly due to kind of short-sightedness and snobbery, really. But now we have the control and the power to publish what we want to write and what we want to read. And that's, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Variety, that's the thing, is like, and when, especially if you follow a particular writer and you like their books, the minute you finish that one, you're looking for the next, isn't it? It's that kind of, oh my God, it's like eating a packet of Pringles. You can never just have one, you've got to finish the whole packet and you're looking for some more. So so it's like that with with romance and with any sort of genres, with anybody who loves to read. So collectively working alongside other writers as well can be a really useful thing to do, because we as from our side of the sort of publishing perspective, if you've got a team of people who are all writing and putting work out at the same sort of time, it can really be a useful thing for the writers to be collaborating with each other and getting to know what's going on, really to try and boost a whole marketing kind of launch and stuff for sales. But that way, when you're recommending other writers' books, it's a really good way of kind of like building up friendships. And I think from my experience, there are a lot of romance writers who have got those kind of networks, because in the past there was a lot of the kind of romance events where you would turn up and there would be lots of people with tables and lots of wee trinkets and giveaways and all this sort of stuff, and that was definitely a kind of thing that you saw more in romance than probably I think any other genre.
There's a big romance community out there, and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. They're there and they're supporting each other, and they're helping each other market their books, and it's great. It's a great thing to be a part of, because they are I've never met a romance writer that I don't like, luckily for me, and they they're all very supportive of me as well. My work.
And that's lovely. That's how we know we've got some people on tonight specifically because they've come to support you, which is great. So if you have got a particular question whilst we're going through the chat tonight, please put it in the chat box and we'll try our best to answer it. And just give you, so if there's something that you're struggling with, something that you've just had this question about, anything to do around sort of editing and working on writing a romance story, by all means put it in the chat box and we'll hopefully help. So tonight we also are going to be giving away a free kind of romance prompts. So from tonight that you can download. So we will be putting the link up into the chat as well. It's to a Google Drive that you can actually download the PDF that Aimee has produced especially for you for tonight. So can we just tell them a little bit about what that freebie is that people can use, how they can use it?
Yeah, it's a week's worth of romance prompts by I've split it into it's one a day by trope, and it's a kind of good starting point if you are just beginning, but it's also it can be useful if you're in a bit of a writer's block situation or you just need some inspiration. You can use the prompt as a kind of starting point. And write a short amount, and then go back to it later and maybe develop it into something more.
Yeah, So there we go. There's a little freebie for you for tonight, just for coming along. The other good news that I'm going to let you know about, if you hopefully you've seen in the stuff that we were sending out before, is that somebody on the call tonight is going to get to win not one, not two, but a whole 3 set of Aimee's books. So we've got the top tropes that we're just about to kind of delve into and talk a bit around. We've got This Is Where the Magic Happens, the romance novel planner. And we've also got the series Bible for romance novels that can help people kind of keep track of where they're going. So you have to stay on the call till the end tonight, and we will be picking some lucky winner at random and sharing the. Oh, it needs access to the Google link. Oops. Rachel might be able to sort that out for us. It's in our Google Drive, and I think it's maybe the file might not be, it says permission denied. Oh, here we go. Failed. Right, we'll get that sorted for you. People, don't worry about it. We will sort that out behind the scenes. Okay, so can we... and if there is a problem with the download, we will send a link out. I know that we've got your email addresses from everybody kind of signing up for the event, so we can send it out to you later on an email link if there's a problem with the permissions for downloading that. So let's talk then about tropes, and what are they? What do we mean by tropes then, Aimee?
Okay, so a trope is basically a common device. So it's something that can be seen as being overused. Actually, the dictionary definition says that it's a common or overused theme or device or a cliche. So it's often considered to be something negative. So you might see someone in a review saying that a book is full of tropes, but it isn't really a negative thing, and that's I'll come back to why I chose to write the book later. But why we use tropes is kind of the same as a musician with music notes. You use the same musical notes, but every musician comes up with their own song using the same notes. So you wouldn't criticize Taylor Swift for using the same musical notes as the Beatles, but you would criticize her if she wrote a song that sounded exactly like the Beatles song. So within all fiction, there are a certain amount of plots that are available to you, but within romance and within romance subgenres and within all fiction, there are a certain amount of tropes that you can use. And there are tropes in other fiction, but within romance, tropes are widely recognized by readers, and they are wanted by readers. Certain tropes are very popular, and they're actually now being used as a marketing tool as well. So some of the most popular ones, I have a list of quite a few of them in the book, but some of the most popular ones would be like enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, second chance romance when a couple get back together, fake dating, so the old thing about, then you need a date for a wedding to, show your family that you've settled down, or, one of those things. But the key to it for me is that you use it in your own way and make it unique. And that's really important. But yes, it's not negative. It's kind of, there's that snobbery about romance that exists, often kind of comments about the tropes and uses that as a criticism. But they wouldn't do that about a murder mystery. There are lots of tropes within murder mystery, so the big reveal when they get everyone in the room at the end, the
whole Agatha Christie one, absolutely,
or the femme fatale character, or there's so many in different genres, but the romance ones tend to be criticized more.
Well, we don't care because we're all here because obviously everybody's on here wants to, probably loves romance themselves, and no doubt wants to write something that's going to be a bestseller. You know, that's what we're aiming to kind of give you some tips tonight as to how you actually kind of become a bestseller.
Yeah.
So what inspired you then to, because we've got this top tropes, right? So and I wonder if everybody on here has a kind of recollection of top trumps, because I know that was a big factor for you, isn't it? And what you did when you started putting this book together. So
yeah,
top trumps being the cards that we could use. So
I am an admin of a Facebook group called Romance Editors Q and A, and it was my job. It was about 3 years ago. It was my job to do a Trope Tuesday where we featured a different trope every week, and I asked people what their favorites were, what they liked, what they didn't like, which writers did it well, that kind of thing, and it surprised me how visceral people's reactions were to certain tropes. That they would just not touch a romance book if it had that trope in it. And that kind of got me thinking. It made me really curious. I couldn't understand what it was about, because they often don't. There's a lot of talk on Instagram, and there's lots of posts about people's book by trope and favorite tropes and those kind of things, but it very rarely goes beneath the surface of that to find out what it is people like about it or what they don't like. So that kind of got me into a rabbit hole of research, and I decided then to put that together in the book. And the book began as a kind of just a general how-to, until one day the top trump concept just kind of jumped into my head, and I thought, wouldn't it be good to kind of pit the tropes against each other in a fun way, so that the book had kind of a more fun element to it, rather than just being a usual craft book that you have on your shelf to say, oh, I'm a writer, I've got this book about writing on my shelf, but not necessarily read it from cover to cover. So that's where that came from. At the time, I didn't realize that the Americans don't necessarily have top trumps or have heard of it. So I then had to go back and make sure that I'd explained what it was. But it was a card game, or it still is a card game, but I don't think it's sold just as widely as when I was a kid. It was a big thing. And you kind of pit two things against each other and they're rated. So in the book, I rate the tropes using 4 different categories. So the tension, the banter, the controversy, and the believability. And yeah, that's the main concept of the book. And
so out of those 4, the sort of 4 areas, are there? How do we know then what we should kind of concentrate on, or how, if a reader's, if a writer here just now is thinking, okay, I want to start like writing something new, and they've maybe got a little bit of a vague idea but they don't quite know how to take it, how can they use this sort of trump top tropes idea to kind of compare things and figure out what would work best for them?
Well, firstly, the book explains what the trope is and what readers' expectations of that trope are, because the readers' expectations are probably the most important thing when it comes to thinking about the tropes, because they can be quite specific about what they like and don't like. The controversy section kind of tells you what to think about that might cause controversy for your book, because we all know now that the reviews are really important. On Amazon, it can be very hard for a new writer to recover from bad reviews, and they can be quite brutal. Romance readers can be quite, if they don't get what they want and you've promised them something and they don't get that, they will let you know, and the way that they'll let you know is through a review, and that can have knock-on consequences after. So that's the idea of the controversy sections, just to make you aware of what pitfalls there might be, so that you can consider them. And yes, you can decide that it's my book. I don't care what that reader thinks or not, but it's best to be aware of what that controversy could be. Sometimes it's simple things like, avoiding misogyny, or just general things, but there's quite a lot of things in the book that'll help you kind of guide you along the way.
Yeah.
I also split the tropes. I have a list of around about 70 at the back of the book. I don't go into all of those in great depth, or I would never have finished writing the book. But I've split them into 3 categories: plot tropes, character tropes, and setting tropes. And what I would say for a new writer to do is to pick one of each to start with, to give you a starting point for some inspiration. So if, for example, you picked a plot trope, enemies to lovers, and a character trope, it was your best friend's ex, and then you stick them in a small town as the setting, that immediately kind of starts the cogs turning. What could that scenario be? Are they enemies because it's the best friend's ex, or is it something else entirely, and that's another dynamic to it? Are they in the small town? Are they a fish out of water, which is another trope? Are they a fish out of water in the small town, or do they, have they always been there? So that kind of, every trope that you use then has something else for you to think about, and when you add them together, you kind of start to layer them up, which adds a lot of depth to your narrative.
Yeah. So it's really, I think it's a kind of plotting tool, a characters tool, a setting tool. It's giving you, it's the bones, isn't it? This is the thing. It's kind of the building blocks and the foundations for something that you're writing. So that, as you were saying, reader expectation, this is the story you're wanting to tell. And if you are, if you're really serious about that's a bestseller status, and let's be real, if you're a writer, who doesn't want to have a bestseller, right? It's something everybody's going to aspire to.
Yeah.
So having a kind of an understanding of what you could do and how you could layer it, and keep that all in your head, and not just in your head, then that it's going to flow through your story before you even come to work with an editor. It's going to really stand people in good stead to get going.
The thing about best-selling novels, it's kind of there's a balance between creativity and passion, and then writing what readers want to read. And it's getting the balance between those two things right is the key, because you don't want to write something just for readers that you have no interest in, or you're not passionate about, because that comes across. But at the same time, if what you're passionate about is something that people aren't reading or aren't interested in reading, then what are you writing for then? Is it just a passion project that maybe isn't necessarily for publishing? Or it depends what you want. If you're writing for yourself, then that's fine. You write, just write from the heart, write whatever you want. But if you are, if you want that bestseller, or not even a bestseller, but if you want to sell some books, you need to think about your audience. And the tropes are part of the group of decisions that you need to make before you start to write. And there's quite a few, and especially within romance, there's quite a lot of decisions to make before you even put pen to paper.
I think it certainly features across all genres, and I get to work with lots of different sort of genres. So from a publishing perspective, Indie Authors World, we've been around for sort of almost, sort of 10 years. We work with writers, doing all sorts of fiction, non-fiction, poetry, business books, you name it, we've done it. And when somebody had asked the question what we'd published. And often the conversation that I'll have with a writer, first of all, when they come to speak to me saying that they want to publish something, and I'll ask them, I obviously get to read a bit about what they've got and look at what their aspirations are. And if someone comes and says to me, nobody's ever written a book like this before, chances are it's not true, because there's always something that's like it. But that sort of thing, if someone says, oh, this is totally unique, then that's a real difficulty, because readers, as you were saying, it's that reader expectation. If this book is completely unique, how do you find somebody that's going to really like it and they're going to like it? Because that's the thing, is we're all quite lazy, I suppose, when we like something and we know that we've read something and we like it, we're looking for something else that's kind of similar. And that's what you're saying about these, if someone likes the sort of enemies to lovers type story, and they might be looking for another one because they just really enjoyed that, and it might be that that's maybe their own romance story, maybe that's what they're featuring. So
it's really important, because that's how things are sold now. That doesn't necessarily used to be the case, but it is now. When you finish your book on your Kindle, it immediately will recommend books within that same kind of genre and subgenre that you've just read. And if you write something that's kind of outside what is popular, and the scope of what is popular is huge. It's not that you're kind of curtailing yourself to a particular thing. You can still be quite broad about that, but at the minute there's not, I'm not seeing many pirate romances, but so if that's what you want to write, you have to think, well, are there any out there, and who's buying them, and who are those readers, and what do they want? That's important before you start.
Maybe we could start the revolution now for pirate romances. From everybody tonight is going to go off and kind of like
yeah.
I mean, no, if it was Jack Sparrow, I had a thing about Johnny Depp actually, so that was like but exactly that. It is, like I said, if you're writing just for passion, for fun, write something, whether it's weird and wonderful and you're just enjoying using your imagination, then that's great. If you do, like as we've been saying, if you do want to have people reading what you write, and think of potentially even writing as a career and developing your skills, and getting more readers actually interested in following you, so you become one of the names that those readers want to, then these are things that you have to just be aware of. That's the thing, just being aware of it. And what I love about what you've done with this, Aimee, is it makes it I think you're making things quite easy for people to kind of just get started. Because it can be really complicated. People can overcomplicate stories so much. I know that we get things and we're going, goodness, where's this story going? So helping people just to kind of start off simply, and then you can add and layer, as you say, but really kind of getting started. How then does someone choose the sort of best combinations to work with? What's is there something you would say, yep, start, really kind of start here and think about it? How would they go about it?
Well, for anyone who's not kind of familiar with the tropes, a really useful one, and it's probably one of the most popular, is the forced proximity trope, where and it's very helpful at the end of Act 1. So at the end of your Act 1, you have an adhesion plot thrust where something needs to keep these two characters together. So especially if they are enemies, for example, why would they spend time together if they didn't have to? Mm-hmm. There has to be something that's keeping them together, and that's where the forced proximity, or a fake dating scenario, can come in really useful, because they naturally, bring those characters together and have them in each other's company, and they wouldn't be noticing the things that they don't like if they weren't close together. And that those things that they don't like, that they are obsessing about, usually mean that they're obsessing about that person. And so that those two tropes can be very useful at that particular point in a book, to kind of thrust it into the second act. So that would be my kind of tip for beginners, is to kind of pick one of those, along with another trope and a setting trope, and that can really help you get those characters together for a good reason that readers will believe.
Can I just pick up on something there, because I don't know, I mean, it's useful as well, folks that are watching, if you want to tell us if you are an experienced writer already, have you published something, are you just starting? Because it would be good just to get a sense of who's on the call with us tonight. You talked about then Act 1.
Yeah.
And Act 2. So can you explain what you mean for anybody who's like going, I'm not writing a play, because that's maybe something people would think of, and how that actually is useful to help, in the scheme of the stories that you're telling.
Yeah. Before I do that, that's going to be a big part of my group program that we're going to talk about later. But yes, very, very briefly, there is a 3-act structure that's quite common for romance and lots of other books. It basically means your Act 1 is 25% of your book, Act 2 is 50% of your book, and Act 3 is 25%. So it's a way of kind of guiding yourself when you're plotting your novel, to keep the act structure in mind. Within romance, we have very specific set of romance beats as well, which are plot points that you hit along the way. So you use those to kind of guide you when you're writing. And again, that's a very, very brief explanation of something that's a little bit complex that we will.
We could have had a whole other webinar just on that on itself. It's that way I'm thinking. I can see some faces and I'm going, but you can just see Act 1. So
sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just kind of reading because we're going to talk a little bit about what you were saying about your about the group, and we're going to give them a little teaser about what's happening with that. So we've got Ray, not published yet, but have written a novel, had it professionally edited 2.25 times, right? Okay. Set it aside for a few years while I've moved overseas. It's this thing, you can always bring it back out and kind of look at it and go, right, okay, maybe now's the time. Penelope, I've written mine, now needs to edit, but nowhere near publishing yet. Claire's done 4 children's books and some teenage stuff. Lila, self-published 3 steamy romance novels. Oh, and working
right
on
up my street.
The hot and steamy, that's it. And Jane published a short story poetry 2 in Liverpool anthologies, right? Okay, not romance yet, so you might well be inspired by this tonight. Anne Marie written 1, editing, hoping to get it published in the new year. So we've got a range of people in here. With some stuff, and yet Veronica, 2 contemporary steamy romance novels. So and that, I suppose that's the whole thing as well, isn't it? You've got this from the kind of sweet romance that has no sex whatsoever to the full-blown erotica at the other end. So and everything in between.
Yeah, that's another kind of decision that you have to make before you start. And again, that's another thing that readers have a lot of expectations about. When you say you're writing sweet romance, for example, you need to be very careful that there's nothing that's going to cause offense in there. So that that's one of the things that an editor is kind of, well, a romance editor specifically can look out for you. To make sure that you're not breaking any of those rules.
Yeah, because that, like we're saying, that's the whole, avoiding those problems and the the controversy and the things that can come up that can then derail, and that's, I suppose that's one of them, like you've said that you're doing this, but that's not what you've delivered. So
Yeah.
What else is there that people have to kind of look out for or just be aware of that could maybe be problematic for them?
Well, within sweet romance, it kind of depends, because there's a line between there's Christian romance is kind of the at one end, and then you come to sweet, and then you have kind of some open door scenes. Maybe you have some scenes with closed door, and then at the very far end, then you have your erotica, which has no rules whatsoever. And you can have things, BDSM, all sorts of things within in that, and no problem at all. But in the lower end of the scale, you have to be careful about swearing, even using alcohol. There's just a lot of things like that you need to consider that people might not be happy to read about.
Yeah, and like you said, that's the skill and the strength of working with an editor, where you're looking at it fresh and able to pick up on, like you said, whether the story's flowing, if the characters are actually interacting, if we're hitting all those romance beats along the way, if it's been in 3 acts, if you can see the all of those great things come together.
Yeah,
that's where that at the end of the day, someone's got a good chance at least of finding readers that are going to love what they've written. And and there's nothing nicer, I think, when you do then get good reviews, when somebody's going, I loved it, because it's hard if you were only ever getting poor reviews. So
yeah.
So I want to we'll kind of, what have we got? We've got about 10 minutes. We said we would kind of round this up about 8 o'clock. We was asked if there'd be a replay. It is being recorded, so we will put the links out later on to everybody who has signed up. So we will let you know that it's available. So you are, we were talking about this recently about opening up a group to help some people that stage further. So if you are thinking about really kind of developing your story ideas and taking that to the next level, you've got a new sort of group that's starting. So tell us a little bit about what you're going to do then with your group.
Okay, so the first group is going to start in January 2023, and it's for it's about outlining your romance novel. So we will talk quite a lot about those romance beats that I mentioned. We'll talk about the 3-act structure. We'll talk about character development, wounds, goals, motivation, and conflict. There's quite a lot within it. It's 3 months long, 3 webinars, exclusive Facebook group that you can join to get some support along the way, and to meet other writers, which, like we said earlier, is a really kind of important part of the process. We'll also talk about tropes, of course, and yeah, it just either will help you to write your first romance novel, or outline your first romance novel, or outline your best romance novel, because a lot of the time when people come to me for the first time, they maybe haven't known about how to structure their book, and they've just written, they've started to write and they've just written it, and it comes to me with structural issues, and that can just be because they just don't know about those things that I've just mentioned. So that's what the group's for. Maybe later on in the year I'll run a different one for intermediate maybe writers, but for the moment I'm going back to very basic outlining. Get your novel ready to be written. in that 3-month period, so that you don't come up with structural problems further down the line that need to be dealt with by a developmental editor.
And I think this is an absolutely brilliant concept, because I know how talented you are as an editor. So that the whole element of the kind of coaching side, this kind of support, all the work that you do in tropes and planning and all of those things is just fabulous to kind of get an opportunity to kind of come together with other people and develop that structure over the course of 3 months and have your book ready to go. Because if they come to you with something that somebody has written, and I know that as a great editor you will help sort out structural things, but it definitely will make people's writing so much easier. It'll help them with flow, and it's really going to put that, put it all together. We've put a link up, Rachel's put a link up to the programme, and you've got a real special offer for it just now as well, because it is only up until, what is it, the 15th of December. It's only £99.99.
Yeah, it is. I thought I would give people a little early Christmas present, and you can maybe get someone to get it for you for Christmas if writing a book is going to be your kind of New Year's resolution. If you have, if you're already writing, it wouldn't do you any harm to go back, and think about the outlining process. We actually talk about reverse outlining as well. So you can go back to books that you've already written and see if you have hit those beats and that you've structured it right. So hopefully it'll be helpful to everyone, not just complete beginners.
And that's the thing. So if you're sitting here just now going, oh, do you know what, I know I would really love this for Christmas, copy that link and you can pass on to your nearest and dearest.
Yeah.
So here you are, I've solved the Christmas present problem. I just want to come and do this course in January. And not only that, you're going to get me out of your way for a wee while. I'm going to be immersed in love. And what might be the spin-off from that, you never know. That'd be a good way to sell it, to if somebody else is going to buy it for you. So we've had a few questions. We're going to kind of circle back now and just sort of pick up on some of the questions that we've had from earlier, just to see what people were wanting to. So assuming I can just scroll back through some of these. And so Lisa was asking, can we speak about the difference between romance fiction and women's fiction? And how would an editor, how do editors might differentiate then between romance and women's fiction?
Women's fiction is generally about the woman's journey through the book, whereas romance is about a couple. Romance has the couple's story. You meet both characters. Sometimes you have dual point of view in a romance. A lot of the time you have dual point of view, where the couple can be male, female, can be female, whatever. They come together. It's about their journey to their happily ever after. In women's fiction, it is usually about the woman's journey from her character development throughout the novel. It doesn't necessarily have to have it usually has a romance element to it, but not necessarily. And yeah, it depends where in the world you are as well with the editing part. Women's fiction is a lot more popular here, I think, in my experience. But yeah, generally you could probably go to any editor for women's fiction. It's quite generic, whereas romance has very specific things that you need to consider that a romance specialist would know more about.
So another question we have, with the popularity of short stories and novellas, how do you decide whether to write your story as a full-length novel or as a shorter work? So from an editorial perspective, do you have any sort of thoughts on that then, Aimee?
Yeah, that's a good question. the popularity of short stories and novellas can be kind of questionable. There are a lot of them out there, but I don't know whether they're necessarily selling huge amounts the way that the full-length novels are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually in the middle of putting together an anthology myself of romance novellas, and we're hoping that it sells well, but most of the people who are involved kind of know that it won't sell as well as their full length works. Partly, if when you're starting at the outlining process, if you have a lack of subplots, that can be a kind of deciding factor whether you have enough to write a full-length novel or not, and that can be your kind of decider.
Yeah, and I think from me, from a sort of publishing perspective, if novellas can, if you write a kind of maybe a little series of novellas, so that you're taking, so you've kind of almost got those kind of short stories that are kind of like going to kind of that you can maybe link them, and they're almost like a series, and they're maybe quite short. They tend to probably do a bit better, or like you said, there's an anthology of something where you've got a collection. People do read those. And maybe just to cut your teeth. I mean, sometimes it's just getting started, is that just having the confidence then we'll start off with something that is a rounded story that you've finished, but it may not be fully fleshed out. But yeah, in terms of sales, yeah, novels still, full-length novels still tend to sell, more than shorter ones. So okay, I think unless I've missed any, I think that was the kind of main questions. If anybody's got any other questions that they want to, we've just got a couple of minutes. Whilst I'm going to do the random draw for someone to win. Here we go again. Top Tropes, wonderful book, the series Bible, and this is where the magic happens. So, and great opportunity. So I've got little number random ones here with everybody's name, and we are going for, so Anne-Marie Monroe. If Anne-Marie Monroe is still, there we are, we've got a wave from Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, if you can, Rachel, can you send Anne-Marie a little direct message there, so that she could reply to you, so that we can get your address, and we can arrange to get those books popped in the post for you. So
enjoy.
So that's it. Hope you have fun with those. So what how are we doing? Have we picked it? Have we kind of covered top tropes, writing stuff for a bestseller? Is there anything else, Aimee, that we want to kind of leave them with, a little sprinkling of magic that maybe to kind of get them excited then as we're heading towards Christmas, other than thinking up your pirate romances?
You've put me on the spot now.
Sorry. So yeah, we will send the prompts and the email if that wasn't. I don't think Rachel saying didn't quite work, the permissions.
Yeah, it didn't quite work for me, but could just be I don't have permission for it. So we'll work it out. We'll get it sent.
We'll send it to you. Yeah, we'll send it to you. We've got your email addresses, so we will send you a link so that you can actually get it later. So terribly sorry about that, folks, but there you go. There's a reason to kind of check your email again. Yeah,
if you write anything in the prompts that you're particularly proud of, you can feel free to post it to my Facebook page, because I'd be very happy to see them and share them. Yep.
So that is Aimee Walker, and it's just Aimee Walker Editorial Services on Facebook.
Yeah.
So please do keep an eye on what Aimee's doing. If anybody is interested, I'll say the links there again for your group. Please share it with, if you've got other people as well that you think that might be interested in it, please share it with them, because I think this is a really pretty unique opportunity for someone to come and work for 3 months and get that all sorted and get your novel outlined for you. We've got people saying thank you. They've really enjoyed it. It's been a good session. I think thank you so much, Aimee, for sharing tonight. It was really good to get to talk to you a wee bit more, a bit in depth for romance. We will send out a link as well that you can watch the replay if you missed out on anything. And we hope that we'll maybe see you again. Indie Authors World does have events fairly regularly. We do online book launch events, and we'll have some other just general sort of publishing tips and marketing tips that will be happening next year as well. So keep your eye out for those. And can I say thank you so much, everybody, for turning up tonight. And I really hope that you have a lovely Christmas and get writing. We want to be reading some bestsellers from you all. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. So I think everybody has enjoyed it.